Hey y'all, it's Jacqueline at Pixie Does PhD. Today is March 28th and we are doing Chef's Counter at Napa Rose. I am so excited. We're here in the lobby of the Grand Californian shortly before check-in. Now Napa Rose is going down for a kind of lengthy refurbishment pretty shortly after this, so it's entirely possible that this footage will be like historical archival. They might totally change how they're doing things, but can't wait absolutely to bring you along. Probably will not be filming live just to not ruin the experience, but I'm gonna take copious notes and we will do a recap. Hey y'all, it's Jacqueline and Adam from a bit in the present. So we just got back from our Napa Rose dinner and we wanted to do a recap, and I'll insert footage as we go. Basically, we just didn't want to like be live filming during this very intimate event. So first things first, our sommelier is Julio. He was awesome. And his sort of assistant sommelier, actually I don't know if he had a sommelier title, but his assistant was Roberto, helped with making sure that like all of the silverware is correct. Our napkins were always perfect. The water was refilled, like zero complaints about either of them.
They were extremely attentive and attuned to what we were all about this evening. It was very nice.
Yeah, totally. And so we sat, and when you book Napa Rose, at least as of now, and these things might change given the refurbishment, but as of now, when you book Napa Rose, they tell you the price and the wine pairing price. And when we got there, we knew the price of the food. And then Julio let us know there were actually 3 levels of wine pairing. There was like standard, premium, and masterclass, basically. And we just went both with the standard.
Yeah, he tried to upsell us a little bit about the masterclass, and we were like, no thanks.
I
appreciated it though.
Neither of us really have like a refined enough palate to make it worth it. And it wasn't like a pressure sell by any means.
But if you have thousands of dollars and love wine, they have wine that is at that price point that they will sell you.
I mean, for the record, we don't know what the prices were for premium.
No, we do not.
Or masterclass. We were just like, we'll do the standard, thank you. And that was $125 a person.
That's right.
Okay, so first things first then, they poured us some champagne. I think that the first course and the first wine is pretty set for everyone unless you tell them that you have like a strong preference or an allergy. So we had some champagne. Honestly, it was lovely. And then we specifically were sat in seats 1 and 2. There are, as of now, 12 seats at the chef's counter, and they don't turn them over is my understanding. So like your seats are your seats for the night. So we were sat at the first 2 seats, that is at the appetizer station. They brought us our champagne for our first course. And then we talked to one of the sous chefs about our preferences, of which we said basically like, you know, we're here to try new things, other than I did tell them like I don't want particularly gamey meats, but Adam was down for everything.
And they did listen, for sure.
Yeah, totally. So then the first course came out, and I just have some notes that I took on old school pen and paper to look a little bit more classy than like typing on your phone. So the first course came out, and it was a warm poached shrimp that was molded in like a ring mold beautifully. It had caviar on top. There was what they called like a potato salad underneath, but it's nothing like a potato salad that you would infer. And then there were poached potatoes and also like hibiscus roasted potatoes, I think, and a lime crema fraiche. So it was shrimp, caviar, potato, some stuff underneath the shrimp. And that was the first course, again, that I think more or less everybody gets.
Yeah, it was a great opener because it really set the stage for like how meticulous and how much attention to detail all of the chefs put into every single course. It was very good. It
was so thoughtful, both in presentation was immaculate, but also like you can tell that they put a lot of thought into the preparation and the R&D, the development of the dish. Like, I am not a big seafood person. I wouldn't say I actively dislike it, but it's not sort of top tier for me. But like the shrimp was perfect, the caviar elevated it perfectly, the different potatoes, they were the same potatoes but prepared differently, were insane. Like the one potato, the hibiscus potato, was one of the best potatoes I ever had in my life, and I only got like 3 bites, which is a little bit I mean, that's how tasting menus go, but sad for me. But it was just like such a high note to start on, and I understand why they start everybody off that way.
Yeah, nothing was very simple. It was all very elevated.
Totally. Before we get to course 2, I will say that I was wearing this to the restaurant, but I did also bring a leather coat for, walking back at night. I figured I would be chilly. And so the restaurant was chilly. It wasn't freezing. I wasn't like in pain, but it was cold. So kind of after the first course, I just said like, well, I'm actually kind of cold. So I put my leather coat on, and then they pretty close to immediately brought me like a pashmina scarf. And were like, here, you can sort of wear this for dinner instead of like your big bulky leather coat, which I did. And so appreciated it. And that just kind of tells you the story of the restaurant. Like, obviously we were at chef's counter, but I have a high suspicion that they would have done that kind of for any guest who asked and said like, hey, actually, like, I'm really cold. Is there anything you can do about that?
Yeah, they were extremely attentive to what you needed at any time, which was a hallmark of a good restaurant with service.
All right, so second course, I got a Chardonnay wine pour. Adam had a Chenin Blanc wine pour. Chenin Blanc is arguably my favorite varietal, so I'm not gonna lie, when they came around with it, I was like, so jealous. And subsequently also, like, I don't love Chardonnay. I would say it's like a white wine I tend to avoid, but the Chardonnay was very good. It wasn't overly like oaky, nutty, mineral. It was actually extremely well balanced. That being said, your Chenin Blanc was like perfection.
I do not disagree. It was very good. And it came with our seafood course, which was out of this world good.
Yeah, so for me, the seafood course was what they called Tide Pods, I think, which is a funny name, but I heard it being called that. Like, I don't think they told you the course names personally, hardly ever.
No, yeah.
But I feel like I heard them be like, fire Tide Pods. But I could be wrong, for the record. But so mine was basically a seafood soup, but like the most elevated manner. So there was an uni foam, and then they poured over some broth into it to make more of a soup. There was cockles, there was Baja shrimp, and then there was one single actual Hokkaido scallop, and it was so good. And there were like 3 kinds of seaweed and a couple beans, and yeah, the fish broth, etc.
And I had a very cool swordfish dish that they called pumpkin swordfish, because it was just a normal swordfish, but it was like one of like 300 or 1 in 1,000.
3,000, he
One
said.
in 1,000 swordfish that eats mainly a diet
3,000.
of shrimp, so
Yeah.
it picks up that pink color. So it was a very different colored swordfish. I don't think it tasted too different from other swordfish, but it was just very interesting and very cool looking, which was fun.
So I don't think I've ever had swordfish before, so I can't comment on if it tasted any different. I would not assume that just because it ate more shrimp and it happened to be a pumpkin swordfish that it would taste different. But yeah, the texture on it was really good. Like, if
They did a good
you're
job.
adverse to fish because of texture, I would say like the swordfish texture was a very different experience overall in a pleasant way.
It was very meaty, like red meaty.
It was super meaty. And yeah, also underneath your swordfish, there was a green garlic puree, and there was also some like black lentils and some other substance, but mostly the green garlic puree was like tomb up to volume 17. Like, it was one of the best kind of like side accoutrements I've ever had.
Yeah, what she said.
On to course 3 then. It was our vegetable course for wine pairings. I had a Pinot Noir. It was a very elevated version of Pinot Noir, but it did definitely read that way. Adam had a wine that I'll put text on screen, but it was a very like strawberry forward red wine. It was pretty light in color.
It was light, yeah.
And like light bodied, honestly.
Correct. It was very different from like the standard red wine you'd see.
Totally. And then for our food, you had a carrot medley, which was like carrot 5 or 6 ways. I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah.
Bunch of different types of carrots, celery root puree. There was a little bit of butternut squash and also some Japanese radish.
And chipotle.
Oh yeah, and like a little bit of chipotle. Like, some of the carrots apparently were tossed in chipotle, and there was also like an olive drizzle, like an oil drizzle that I'm convinced had a little bit of chipotle. I don't think we ever confirmed that.
Yeah.
But it was so good. I mean, I like carrots in general, so I knew I would like that dish, but it was so good. Like, that is the level of respect vegetables should be treated with all the time. Then my dish in this course was a cremini mushroom panna cotta with also some sauteed mushrooms on the side, and there was a sweet potato puree underneath all of it. The sauteed mushrooms, again, were like, that's how vegetables should be treated. I would say, generally speaking, I do not care for mushrooms. I find them to be, I don't know, kind of like overly earthy tasting, like a little bit like dirt. Like I just don't really care for them. But the mushrooms that they presented were like, that's what I think of it should be when people say like, oh, mushrooms are meaty. Like I tasted that and it was delicious. The mushroom panna cotta, it turns out that they just steep mushrooms in cream over and over and over. So you steep mushrooms for 15 minutes, you strain them out, you steep another batch of mushrooms for 15 minutes, you strain them out like 5 or 6 times until you get cream that tastes enough like mushrooms. And then they set it as a panna cotta with some agar, and they have some like dehydrated mushroom powder that they put on top. That objectively tasted very good. I just don't prefer like a panna cotta texture.
It was crazy. It was a warm panna cotta too.
True, yeah. That was like definitely a different experience because you had your warm sort of typical grilled whatever cremini mushrooms, cremini et al. Like it was definitely more than one type of mushroom, and then your panna cotta mushroom roll, but it was warm, which was very interesting.
Yeah, definitely a very interesting dish, but the carrot was an absolute fire eating experience.
Yeah, the carrot honestly is one of my top dishes coming out of this whole experience. And I'm not a vegetarian, you know what I mean? Like, I appreciate a good piece of meat, a lot of dairy, all those things, but like to go away from this whole experience where like, oh, and I don't know that it's vegan, there might have been dairy at all in it, but like to go away with this being like that vegetable dish, that carrot dish was one of my favorites, extremely impressive. For course 4 wine pairings, I ended up with a Sangiovese. Again, I will put text on screen with some more details. And Adam had a Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, and this was kind of our proper meat dish. I mean, there was another meat coming, so one of 2 at least. I ended up with partridge that was from Nevada, very specifically, and it had an apple puree as well as some raw apple and some Swiss chard, which sounds really weird when they present it to you, but we will get to that in a second. Adam got a duck. It had an iron helmet puree, basically, which is a type of Japanese squash that I guess in the chef world is known for being very difficult to work with, but they managed to make it work. And then there was also a little bit of blood orange and some bitter grilled endive. So the partridge itself is not, it's a pheasant, right? It's not that different than a chicken. We got like one leg. It was perfect. It was divine. It was like everything you've ever wanted out of roast chicken, dialed up again to like 17, 18, 19, 20. And then, but you hear it and you're like, apple puree and apple, like what is this about? But all of the flavors, again, are like so thoughtfully crafted, and you can tell they spend so much time in research and development doing this so meticulously, where like, it wasn't applesauce and it wasn't like bright, intense, in-your-face apple. It just went so well together. And also like, I do not like chard. I would say like there's a lot of extremely bitter leafy green vegetables that are not for me, but however they treated it worked so perfectly. They weren't too bitter, they weren't too slimy. Like every bite of that was so fantastic.
So my dish was a simple roast duck with very much Thanksgiving vibes and flavors. I found that it really hit that nostalgia itch of this is me eating Thanksgiving lunch or dinner with the family. Not in a bad way, but like it basically tasted like a slice of turkey with cranberry sauce and sweet potato casserole.
But like duck.
But like duck, and like very tasty and elevated, of course, in like every way. But like that's the nostalgia hit that it gave me, which, you know, brought me back to a place and time, and I enjoyed it. But it like was not on the same level of like craveability that pheasant was, which was perfect. The cook was perfect on the duck. The skin was perfectly crispy, and it was very good, but just definitely not quite the same as that pheasant, which was mind-blowing in my opinion.
Yeah, so to be clear, like the duck was objectively executed 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10, whatever you want to rate it. It was great. But there was something extra special about the partridge that was just really like, how is this something I'm eating right now?
Yeah.
And I joked while we were there, I was like, this is what Liberty Tree Tavern wishes it was. Like that course, to Adam's point, was American Thanksgiving, but better, but elevated, but everything you've ever wanted it to be. Which then, of course, I'm like, well, if only Liberty Tree Tavern could serve food this good.
Yeah.
Then the 5th course was another meat course. So for wine, I got a Cab Sauv, and Adam had a Merlot. And then for food, I had a filet mignon. There was an onion puree. There also was like a fried beef tendon. So think of like a chicharron, but beef tendon instead. and then beef cheeks and mustard buttered. Adam had parts of a rack of lamb. It was Galantine style, so also like different lamb kind of around the outside, lots of mint, lemon, and then you also had a green garbanzo bean. I had filet mignon, so obviously it was like delicious. It's filet mignon. The beef cheeks were surprisingly really good. I've not eaten a ton of beef cheeks in my life, but I find that they tend to be like a little tough. These were so tender, so tasty. The onion puree was, super allium forward, exactly kind of what you would think of based on that name. It does kind of present as mashed potatoes, so it comes off a little bit surprising if you forget that you're eating onion puree. But all in all, my dish was super good and I have no complaints. But compared to like the partridge where you were like, oh, I never would have expected it to be this good. Like that filet mignon was as good as I expected it to be. It didn't like break expectations.
Yeah, that meat course was definitely a highlight for me. The lamb was like basically covered in all kinds of spices and herbs to help balance out some of the gamey flavor, and it was cooked perfectly. It was so good. Although it was not a fillet, I still enjoyed it. It was quite good. Yeah,
totally. And I had a little piece of the sort of inside like tenderloin part of the lamb.
Yeah, the non-lammy lamb.
The non-lammy lamb. And it had definitely been like marinated or something in orange and mint, and so I really do not like gamey meats. Like that's a pretty strong thing for me. And I had a bite of yours and it was a little gamey, but not much at all. Like considering it was lamb, I was surprised. Like they obviously treated it with the utmost respect. Then our sixth and final course was dessert. And so we both got dessert, port, wine, pours. Again, text on screen. I don't really know anything about port. They were pretty alcoholic though, for sure. Like it is fortified wine and you could tell.
Yeah, like 20% alcohol, very much a digestif. And it was very good with the dessert, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah, and one of the sous chefs was very kindly giving us notes of like what dessert to order on Post-it. So our som was asking us like, what desserts would you want? Like, tell us about what flavors you like, whatever. And then the sous chef kind of back in the kitchen was like, get this one, get this one. So, that was awesome. So specifically, sous chef Brian said like espresso and citrus. So we followed his lead. And then one of the desserts was a dark chocolate espresso, concoction. It kind of looked like a tree base. Yeah. They didn't describe it that way, but I think you'll see the footage. It definitely is tree inspired. And then there was a sea salt foam. And the other one was a yuzu semifreddo with some white chocolate and I don't even know what other accents, but it was one of the best desserts I've ever eaten. I've never had a semifreddo that good, either in texture or flavor.
Yeah, the dessert was definitely a highlight and it was very good.
Then finally, to wrap things up, we were given two little, I think, dark chocolate ganaches, just, kind of like little treats as you're signing your very big bill. So for the record, this was, after tax and tips, almost $900 for the two of us for the chef's counter food, as well as the standard wine pairing. So not the premium, not the master wine pairing. It is an incredibly expensive experience, but you really are sat like right where all the action is. You can interact with the chefs, the sous chefs, and I don't know what levels below sous chefs, but whomever is working the line, no problems. They're all super nice, super friendly. It's interesting to hear kind of the person working the pass and calling everything out. And it's sometimes to an extent kind of like calling out mistakes.
Yeah, it's dinner and a show for sure. Like if you're a big fan of like The Bear or a cooking show that takes you into the kitchen, it is very cool to like get a first source view of that kind of night in the kitchen. And it's a very busy kitchen too.
Definitely. Sure. And you get to see all of the standard food being fired, which is interesting because obviously you are primarily getting, quote unquote, special food, special courses.
Yeah, like tasters of their main course dishes or appetizers.
Or completely different things.
Exactly.
To begin with.
Or like riffs.
Yeah. I think one of the standard courses that they made just a ton of, because we were sitting at the appetizer station, so we saw this, was like a tuna crudo. And we didn't get that. I'm sure probably other people at Chef's Counter got that, depending on like what they said their preferences were. But we didn't get that. But we saw them made dozens of those easily. And it was really, honestly fascinating, like watching them be so meticulous and getting every single one of these plates out perfectly. So yeah, Chef's Counter at Napa Rose is definitely a super special experience. I do not think I can like blanket recommend it just because the cost is so...
It's a lot. It's an experience, but it's a lot.
I don't want to say absurd because there is part of me that's like, I don't know, it felt kind of worth it. But obviously it depends on like your mindset, your disposable income, your budget. Like we very much went into this as this is our anniversary dinner.
Right.
We've been together for 11 years now. So, you know, we definitely splurged. It's probably a once in a lifetime thing for us. Like, you know, even if we start going to Disneyland more regularly, we're not going to go to Chef's Counter all the time. And same with, you know, even up until today, we were kind of like, well, are we going to do the wine pairing or not? We could just each get a single glass of wine. But it was like, well, when are we ever going to do this again? We may as well get the wine pairing.
And to be fair, literally every single party that we saw got the wine pairing.
Yeah, and I don't think there's pressure. Like, if you want to do it and just do the food and not do the wine pairing, I think that's fine. But
it's a special occasion kind of thing. Everyone was doing it.
Right. If it's a special occasion and you have the disposable income and the budget, I would suggest it. And the wine pours were bigger than I thought they would be, so I was more pleased about the end result of the wine pairing than kind of going into it. I thought it would be like, well, this is going to be a little lame for the price, but it was pretty good.
Yeah, overall, fantastic experience. Definitely expensive, but for what we wanted it to be, I think it was just right and a great time.
Yeah, so obviously we're over the moon, so happy. Like, I have no notes. Like, it's beyond my...
You have notes?
Well, I have notes of what we ate and drank, but I don't have notes of like improvement because it was just so far beyond my comprehension of what I could ever do. As opposed to sometimes you go eat in restaurants, you're like, well, I would do XYZ different, better, whatever. Like, this was phenomenal, and the head chef was there and we got to interact with him, which was pretty cool. And yeah, it was a very special experience. I'm so glad that we got to do it. Again, I wouldn't say it's a blanket recommend just because of the price, but I'm also super glad that we got to sort of bring you along, even though it wasn't necessarily a lifetime, it was same day. And we'll see when this gets posted. Again, Napa Rose is going down for refurbishment for like a lot of months after we're here. Like, as of the day we dined, I think they said it was 8 days. And then the restaurant goes into quote unquote hibernation.
Till the fall, quote unquote.
Yeah, the hibernation is the word they like to use, which I messed up, but whatever. So it's entirely possible that the experience changes, but I think the heart of it will be the same in that like you will be sitting right at the action, you will be able to interact with these amazingly talented chefs, and you will have a very curated experience. If you have any questions about our experience, again, noting that it might change once Napa Rose reopens in the fall, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for all of your support of the channel. Super appreciate all of you liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Once you're subscribed, you can ring the bell icon to receive notifications whenever we upload new videos. And obviously we are at Disneyland, so more Disney content coming. And extra special thank yous to all of my monthly supporters over on Ko-fi. I really do appreciate all of your support and especially all of your insights in helping us plan this Disneyland trip. May the rest of your day be magical, and we'll see you real soon at Pixie Dust PhD.
Bye.